Oh, I thought we were on. I was trying to do subtle reads there.
I did think you were leaning toward reads a little bit there. I was like, he's plugging. I think he thinks we're on.
Hey, we've got 14 games and we have 50 minutes and we got to get our hustle on, Terry. So I'm just trying to slide in a few things.
Yeah, I thought Chris would have just heard it and like flip the button on.
Yeah.
Does that mean that's not me creating the feedback? All right.
Yes. It's like we're in the looper feedback loop.
That actually gave me time to put all these lineups in.
Oops, and I distracted myself again from creating those lineups. Damn it. We have free article for this. We've got updated stats. It's awesome. It rules.
For soccer?
Yeah, the great part was chasing that overlay that first game or that first day when Alex won the 100,000.
Right.
With the guy who didn't start, getting a goal and an assist. I did the same thing. I took him out of all but one lineup that I missed, and then I profited like $200.
I think you showed me that one. So yeah. Alex had that dude in that lineup?
So that was the $100,000 difference maker. Because he was coming. That. Yep, let's go. All right, let's get into baseball. Talking about all sorts of goodness here on the Awesemo premium projections of a variety of sports behind the paywall. If you guys use promo code MLB strategy show. We'll give you 25% off your first week for new Awesemo members. Terry, how you doing? It's been a whole week since we've chatted, which is rare. I've been busy with the day job, generally starting my day at 6 a.m. I usually crash for about a 90-minute nap / lunch / shower at like 5 o'clock, and then I work till 10 o'clock. So I've been putting in these 12 and 14-hour days. It sucks. And then I write some articles and do some shows. Good times.
Man, never stops. That is some hardcore work. Yeah, it's not quite the days where we'd be like ships passing in the night where I'd be going to bed at like 6 a.m. as you're waking up at 6 a.m. These days I'm getting up and doing my thing with the behind-the-scenes job and all. But, yeah, things are going pretty well. I don't think it's been quite as hardcore as what you've been burning the candle at both ends here. But this is a chaotic baseball morning. FanDuel was down all morning. I was trying to get my sheet together here, so I'm a little bit scrambled with what's where. I think I've got everything aligned now. It came back up like 10 minutes ago, so I was able to drop the correct salaries back in instead of stitching it together. So I think we're good here, but if I trip over anything, I'm going to blame FanDuel for being down this morning and my lack of coffee that it consumed.
Yeah, I wonder if there was something going on with any of the stat providers or something, because DK didn't pay out until this morning for MLB. You and I were joking about as much garbage as I pitched towards the MLB starting lineups or probable pitchers page. They haven't put players capsules up for the last 2 days. So did I shame them into not doing their old timey write-ups of, Adam Wainwright will be facing the Pittsburgh for the 38th time this season. He has never had a complete game in his career against the Pirates, right? Totally actionable information.
The most relevant little nuggets. But I think, yeah, you broke that intern's heart. That poor intern just quit and moved back to Minnesota or whatever. That's it. That's the end of MLB.com blurbs. Way to go.
That's the boulevard of broken dreams. All right. Let's jump on in here. We do have quite a few games to go. We're not talking about the 1 o'clock game. That is the Houston and Detroit game. We have projections for that. Nobody's including it on any of the slates. There are some single game contests for it, but hey, whatevs. So we're jumping right in here. First game we have is Cleveland at Minnesota. Still waiting on the lineup here for Cleveland. They are running out Sam Hentges. I'm going to trip on his name. Hentges for the second straight spot start. He had been in their rotation before, ended up going back to the bullpen, but he's coming in for another turn here. He'll be going for probably 55, 60 pitches. I think he went like 53 or 57 in his last outing. He's going against the Twins. Boy, who hasn't been on the injured list for the Twins, yet they still keep churning things out. I think the only reason Miguel Sano is still in the league at this point, or still on their 25-man roster, is they have so many injuries. Well, that and his 300 isolated power going up against his 37% strikeout rate. Lead us through the first game, Terry.
Yeah, I was going to say, Miguel, he's a 193, 273, 40, 37, triple slash. So if we want to talk about some of the traditional metrics and batting average, yeah, he's way below the Mendoza line, striking out like crazy. But he does have 14 home runs, 244 ISIS. I mean, the power is still there. And that's who Miguel Sano has always been. He's always been that strikeout heavy, 3 true outcomes kind of a guy. It's just that the second outcome with the walks and the getting on base, not so much there. 273 on base is miserable. This is one, I think it's all about the Twins offense anyway, just getting to some of those righties, going up against a bad lefty. Hentges, 24.3% strikeout rate, 10.5% walks, 4.27 xFIP, and a 189 whip. Way too many guys on base, not striking enough guys out. Has a 10.8% swinging strike rate, but just a 24.5% CSW percentage. That means he's not finding the plate. 14 and change percent called strikes is just miserable. So this is a targetable pitcher from what I'm seeing. I think you can throw these Twins bats at him all day long. He's in the 5th percentile in barrel rate, the 2nd percentile in expected slugging percentage, the 19th in hard hit rate, the 17th in average exit velo. Ton of power indicators coming back against the kid here. So yeah, absolutely fire away with Polanco, Donaldson, Nelson Cruz, Trevor Larnach, even Miguel Sano in there makes some sense to me. It's all about the bats in this one. On the other side, Kenta Maeda, 21.7% strikeouts this year, down to a 4.11 xFIP. He's rounding into form a little bit, but he's not the just dominant master of the ground ball and soft contact that he was last season. So it's not a spot where he's really popping for me. If you need somebody from the mid-range, it's a short slate on FanDuel, only 3 games, but on the DK slate, it's bigger. You get him at 6,800. I think he's in play from the mid-range at that price. I think he makes some sense. Talented guy, struggled through the first part of the year, still sitting in the 32nd percentile hard hit rate, the 46th percentile barrel rate, the 22nd of expected slugging. We know he's a better pitcher than that. So I think there's some upside for Maeda at that price. I've been getting to him a little bit through the season. It's mostly dinged me, but I'm willing to continue relying on it because when he's on, what he does well is take the bats completely out of the other team's hands. And I think there's a good path for him to do that here against these Indians, who are not the greatest offense in the world. They do have some power bats in there, but just in general, not a great offense. They don't strike out that much, though. The projected lineup, 21.7% strikeout rate.
All right, let's continue on here. A lot to talk about, short time to get there. Eastbound and Down, Back on Bandits Run. Oh, what a great song. What a great song. Mariners at the White Sox. Looks like there's a little bit of precipitation in the area. It's going to be warm. It's going to be humid. I don't think we're going to run into rain issues, but double check that because we are going to want to look to Lance Lynn this afternoon. He gets the nice matchup going against the Mariners, who are, well, let's just say no bueno when it comes to bats. They've been on a bit of a, they have a horseshoe installed where the sun don't shine. And the interesting thing is here, that's going to just be exposed at some point. So outside of Mitch Haniger, Kyle Seager, maybe Ty France, there's really nobody to be for Lynn to worry about. And 2 of those guys are righties. And Lynn has been absolutely phenomenal against righties here. It's going to be Lynn versus DeGrom on the 1-pitcher sites. You can get both of them in on the 2-pitcher sites, start to run out of salary cap, but it is possible. How do you feel about Lance Lynn, and would you run a 2-pitcher Lynn DeGrom strategy on Yahoo or DraftKings?
Yeah, assuming that you can afford anything else with that. They're
it's
not
like just shy of 3,700
so
on DK. Yeah, just shy of 3,700 on DK. Yahoo, if you work in 1 or 2 of their $7 guys, you're going to be back up in the low teens, so you'll be able to do it there.
Yeah, so, pending what we're putting together with that, I would definitely do it. I tend to dip more into the mid-range, the cheaper guys as SP2s. I do that a little bit on FanDuel, probably to my own detriment, where I'm mixing in some of the mid-range guys to pay up to different bats. It's tournament winning when it works, and it's deadly when it doesn't. So I'm willing to do it and embrace some risk there. So I don't know that that would be my main construction, but it's obviously an excellent build at pitcher. It's just limiting for what you can get to with bats overall. That is a decent amount of salary left. You probably can string together some good enough teams, but it might preclude you from getting to the absolute best stacks available. So that would be the one concern there. But yeah, in terms of talent, in terms of pitchers, I think those are the clear-cut 1 and 2 on this on the DK slate. It's getting a little confusing. The FanDuel slate, you only get Lance Lynn out of that pair. He's my top projected FanDuel pitcher on that early FanDuel slate by a pretty wide margin. I think it's a great spot for him. It's actually interesting looking at how these offenses perform against righties. Matchup-wise, Gilbert's actually in the better spot. The White Sox strike out at a 23.9% rate against righties. They create runs just 2% better than average. They have just a 2.60% home run rate and a 138 team ISO against righties, where Seattle strikes out 25.7% of the time. So they strike out more, but they've got a 161 ISO, so a little bit more pop, and a 359 home run rate. So for home runs, at least, for power, at least, run creation and strikeout rate, the Mariners are worse in the split. But it's interesting that the White Sox, in terms of their power upside, and the strikeouts are at least at best middle of the league. The offense is not as good as people give it credit for against right-handed pitching. They're much better against lefties. They're well above average in all those categories against lefties. So against righties, it could be a sneaky upside spot for Gilbert here as well, who's not that expensive. I don't get a great projection. It's not really coming through in the numbers of it, but I think there's some meat on the bone there for Gilbert at 7,200 on DK as an SP2, 7,800 on FanDuel. If you wanted to get frisky on a short slate, you could probably roster him and maybe see a little bit of upside. It's not great, but it's better than probably it seems on paper. I don't think many people are going to be getting there. Lance Lynn, absolutely a smash spot going up against these Mariners, though. I mentioned the strikeouts. The power upside is there. It's better than the White Sox in the split, but it's not immense. So I think he's safe here. 28.1% strikeout rate on the year, 1.0 whip, pitching like Lance Lynn, goes reliably deep into games when he's healthy, which he's been since that little stint on the IL earlier in the year. Love everything about the spot for Lynn.
Yeah, the one thing I do want to point out on Gilbert, on a pitch per dollar basis, he's not bad. He's averaging 99 pitches over each of his last 3 starts. So that's been in Anaheim, against the Angels, in Cleveland, and then against Tampa Bay. He has gone 17 1/3 innings. He's allowed 3 home runs, but just 6 total earned runs. That gives him a 3.12 ERA, and he has a nice 20 strikeouts in 17 1/3 innings. It's nice to see the Mariners kind of letting him work through things. I suspect they'll cap his innings towards the latter part of the year, but at this point in time, they're sort of letting him run with things. Today will be his 8th major league start. So kind of exciting there as a Mariners fan. Continuing along here, I would be remiss if I did not mention PrizePicks is our sponsor. We'll get to them shortly, not to fear, but if you guys sign up, use the promo code Awesemo when you make your first deposit, they will match you up to $100. That's a good deal. You want to jump on that. I also want to let you know you can follow me on Twitter at Emac DFS. Terry's over there at DigitalB21. And of course, it's Awesemo_COM and Awesemo MLB. Follow all of the Awesemo sites. We're constantly doing giveaways, flash sales, and prize contests constantly. So check that out. It doesn't cost anything to follow somebody on Twitter. All right, moving on to the next game here. We have Pittsburgh going into the Cardinals. This is like one of the most pathetic dueling offensive matchups at this point. This season, both of these teams have just been horrible. So I'm going to have some interest in both pitchers. I do want to mention this was not written by the starting lineups page on MLB.com for probable pitchers, but it actually is the 39th career start for Adam Wainwright going against Pittsburgh. No actionable data there, but that is pretty cool for that overall number. We have Wainwright facing down a 3.8 implied run total here. It's going to be humid, sort of warm, and a 20-mile-an-hour breeze going out to left field. That's the negatives for both pitchers. The positives, the lineups they will be facing. How are you approaching this one, Terry?
Yeah, so I think I like both pitchers. I would have decent pieces of both of them, probably leaning more into the Wainwright side of things. Just a little bit better track record. My model loves Adam Wainwright. He never really turned truly bad in my model. And as soon as he started pitching well again this year, like he spiked back up to a premium projection on so many of these slates. And drawing this.
Who else did your model like yesterday from the Redbirds?
Who was that?
Kim?
Oh, yeah. What did he
How
do?
did that work out? Just saying, perhaps there's a flaw in your model. They do like the Cardinals a little too much.
It could be. It could be. I think it's probably more driven by the 128 team ISO, the 2.38% home run rate for the opposing team. The Pirates just suck in terms of offense. 21.4% strikeout rate. The one thing they do well is not strike out against both hands. So maybe they cap the upside for Waino in terms of the strikeout rate, but I see him going deep into the game. I see him putting up a solid start. Handful of strikeouts, good shot at the win here. The Cards are the better team out of these two teams in terms of the offense. They're flowing a little bit better, 3.28% home run rate, so a decent amount higher in terms of the home run rate, a 148 ISO, so 20 ISO points higher, 22.6% strikeout rate. They also, as a team, don't strike out all that much, but there are a couple heavy strikeout guys like O'Neill in that lineup. I think there's enough meat on the bone to start Brubaker, particularly at the pricing. 6,900 on FanDuel is a nothing price. 7,700 on DK is a functional SP2 price. And he's pitched well through the season. 3.57 xFIP, inducing 12.3% swinging strikes, 24% strikeout rate overall, only a 5% walk rate, 71 2/3 innings and 13 starts. There's plenty to like there. I just think if I'm picking sides between the two pitchers, it would probably be Waino based on the trust, based on the matchup. There's less in that Pirates lineup overall.
All right, solid picks dropping in a 199 super chat asking about any weather concerns on this early slate. Yes, there actually is. So when we get to Detroit, which is not on our particular slate, it's mostly in the Midwest, easier way of saying it. So Detroit's got double headers today, depending on what you're looking at or the different sites, or if you're doing wagering, you may end up with those games in your selections. Just be careful. It's going to rain all day. They're still going to play. If they push the game to later this afternoon, they're going to get the first game in, whether it starts early, whether it starts. If it starts earlier or is delayed somewhat, that one's going to play. We'll have to see what happens with the second one, just depending on time. But I suspect since it's a pair of 7-inning games, both will get in, even if they don't start until this afternoon. With Chicago, there's storms in the area. We're going to have to wait and see closer to lock. You may want to treat that one with kid gloves. Of course, we do have Lance Lynn in that game, who we just talked about, who has been absolutely phenomenal this season, but there is the weather risk there. Now, Lynn also, if you want a reason to get away from him, he has allowed 9 runs in his last 10 innings, so his last 2 starts, but otherwise he's been phenomenal with the 2.14 ERA. So if you need an excuse to get away, let the weather take you over there to DeGrom. If we look at St. Louis, it's humid. There could be some roving thunderstorms. I call them roving. We don't pop up thunderstorms. That's more of like an Atlanta thing, but it does happen in St. Louis, particularly because they're right next to the Mississippi and it gets really hot there and really humid. It's a DC area for Baltimore, and the Nationals impact as well a little bit in Philadelphia. Basically, you just get these heavy afternoon rains. Over the years, with global warming and pollution, those have started to happen now closer to 6, 7, 8 o'clock. They used to happen closer to 4, 5 o'clock. Rains like a mother, feels like you're in a car wash for 20 minutes, goes away an hour later, doesn't look like it's rained at all. That's the kind of rain we're looking at. So if it sits somewhere or lasts longer, we could have our pitchers, if they're warmed up and going, they may not come back out. We'll have to see. I don't see anything's postponed today. That's just my early read right now. And then I thought there was one other game, Minnesota. Your mileage may vary on that one. Again, we'll have to see where things are a little closer to the forecast. The nice thing is our late slate, or our main slate's only 4 games. Those look relatively safe. Today we have a couple games at 2 o'clock and then the remainder at 4. We have plenty of pivot options. So you'll have some exit strategies as long as your game is not locked. All right. Now we don't have to talk about weather for the rest of the game. Otherwise, it's warm and it's great hitting
and
weather.
You hit the weather pun. It's great. If you'd worked in a rain in Spain in there, it would have been perfect. But it was high marks across the board.
All right. Now let's move to Baltimore and Toronto. Are you ready for this one? Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has 25 home runs. Fernando Tatis Jr. had 3 last night. They're now tied for the league lead. However, Vladdy Jr. does have 62 RBIs for the league lead, and he is 3rd with the 340 average and 6th with 92 hits. 92 hits. That's pretty impressive there for him. We have a 10.5 implied run total here. Here's your first prop of the day. I'm looking at the over. This game is played in Buffalo. Both bullpens have had a lot of work in the last 48 hours. So we're looking at Aiken, who's an unmitigated disaster at this point, and then Hyun-Jin Ryu, who may be asked to sort of take one for a team in Buffalo in this AAA ballpark. Love both offenses. Stay away from the pitchers. How do you feel about that 10.5 over under, Terry?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good target for an over. It makes sense. I haven't looked at our board in my scramble this morning. I didn't get a chance to process through over-unders, but yeah, that seems targetable to me based on the pitching, based on the fact that both of these teams are excellent against lefties. The Orioles have been sneaky, really, really good against lefties so far this season, so I like both sides of this one. Nothing is populated in my projection sheet here because this game's not on the FanDuel slate at all. It was 3 o'clock, just can't have it. So weird decision by them. So I don't have my home run ratings. I don't have my projections, but I can talk about what these guys have done. And Aiken is sitting 33 and two-thirds innings so far over 5 starts, 21.5% strikeout rate, 9.4% walks, too many walks, 4.6 xFIP and a 1.57 whip. He's putting too many guys on base. He's in trouble against a lineup this good. Top to bottom, the Blue Jays are a talented team. You mentioned Vladdy. Vladdy's going to compete for a Triple Crown. It is going to carry these numbers through the whole season. He's obviously excellent, but you can put him together with anybody in this lineup, seriously, from top to bottom. If you want to leave Riley Adams out where you don't have to roster a catcher, fine. But everyone else in this lineup is highly playable, so you can get to them. And then on the Baltimore side of things, they're going up against the better pitcher in terms of career track record, but Ryu hasn't been all that great this year. 20.8% strikeout rate, 3.79 xFIP is fine, a 1.08 WHIP is fine. Striking out, getting 10% swinging strikes, only a 28.3% CSW percentage. So it's just a matter of throwing some of these Orioles bats who have just been tremendous against lefties up against a guy who's somewhat underperforming the career track record and just not striking anybody out. So I can get to bats like Trey Mancini, Ryan Mountcastle, and Anthony Santander, Austin Hayes from that team. I wouldn't leave out Freddie Galvis, who's having a nice sneaky year at shortstop. There's a lot of offense to like in this one. I don't think I would roster any shares of either pitcher.
All right, we're going to keep hustling along, but I do want to tell you about our sponsor, PrizePicks, because we're going to talk about our prize pick play of the day here shortly. So they are offering a very simple fantasy game. All you got to do is pick 2, 3, 4, or 5 player totals / props and choose the over or under. The more you pick 2, 3, 4, or 5, the higher your winning. What would we say? The higher your winning multiplier will be. If you choose a 5-player lineup, you can get 10x your entry fee. So you're not forced into playing 5. You can play as many as you feel comfortable, up to 5. So it's a nice way to do this. There's no sharks. There's no lineup optimizers. There's no mass multi-entry, and you're the one creating essentially your parlay sheet. They have the NBA, they have esports, they've got baseball, they have MMA, they have golf, and you can do cross-sport picks. Very, very helpful. They have a nice app. You can get that on the App Store or Google Play. That's PrizePicks. And the best part, if you use the promo code Awesemo, when you make your first deposit, put in up to $100. They will match you dollar for dollar. So, Terry, here is my prize pick of the day. It is going to be Whit Merrifield once again, 7 fantasy points or more. Now they utilize the FanDuel scoring system here, so you can always just go look at the Awesemo projections, see what the FanDuel scoring is, and apply that over here to PrizePicks. The nice thing is, Whit Merrifield leads the league in home runs. He has had 4 stolen bases in his last 7 games, including 1 last night. A stolen base is worth 5 points. Getting on base in pretty much any fashion is worth 2 or 3 based on balls hit by pitches. 2, a single is 3. So if he's on base other than anything but a fielder's choice, Terry, and he steals a bag, you're already there. You've got the 7. You just need him to do anything else. Maybe he comes around and scores. Maybe he gets an RBI, another hit, another walk, etc. You're going to want to look at that. The nice thing about this, both Texas catchers are horrible. They have a combined 26 for 34 success rate on stolen bases. And again, as I mentioned, Merrifield leads the league. Merrifield got 1 last night. I don't care which Texas catcher is behind the plate. It's not going to be Connor Falafa anymore now that they have, who is it? Heim, and I even forget the other guy's name, but they were both equally garbage when it came to this. Now, but let's talk about Kyle Gibson here, who has been otherwise phenomenal. Kansas City's going to have to manufacture some runs. If Merrifield gets on, I feel like he's going to stretch that single into a double, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. You seem pretty enthusiastic about that one. I like the call. I mean, that seems like a low fantasy total for that over-under. I've got him projected just in my model up at the top of that lineup, 12.81 FanDuel points, so well over that mark. My model skews a little bit high typically, but I think you're comfortably within range of being able to hit that. And like you said, league leading stolen base guy, 21 stolen bases on the season. That's definitely something easily rosterable there. I think, both sides of this game in terms of the offense. I can throw some Royals bats at Kyle Gibson here. He hasn't completely earned my trust in terms of, I know he's pitching fairly well, but still only a 19.3% strikeout rate. The xFIP is 4.10. The WHIP is 1.06. 83 innings in 14 starts, fairly reliable depth. But just taking a look at him on the StatCast board, he's done well in terms of avoiding barrels. 87th percentile barrel rate is excellent, but he's sitting in the 48th percentile average exit velo, the 47th percentile and hard hit rate. So if some of that, I don't know that it's ability versus happenstance, whether guys are connecting with the sweet spot of the bat against him or not. And it seems like they're generating some pretty hard contact without getting the sweet spot of the bat on the ball. So I just worry in terms of power hitting kind of a team going against him with some of these guys in the Royals lineup. And then some guys with an excellent hit tool. I just feel like there's a possibility to have a lot of guys like Merrifield on base and then a lot of guys who have the ability to go deep if they connect with the right pitch. So it's not the safest spot in the world for him. He doesn't project all that well for me, but he's certainly in range based on the pricing. 7,600 on FanDuel is a nothing price, 6,500 on DK. That makes him very, very playable. I expect he'll be pretty owned at that price. So I think he's on the board from those terms. I'm just not super comfortable with it. He hasn't gained my trust yet, but based on pricing and everything else, I think he'd be in there. Kyle Zimmer, not a similar story. I'd be grabbing some Rangers bats against him, taking some of the power here. I'm not getting major power indicators back against him though, so it would be kind of a limited spot for me. They're not my favorite offense on the board either.
Here we are. Excuse me. Here we are. We've got Colorado at Milwaukee. There is weather in the area here. Not to fear. What is it? American Family Insurance Field or American Family Field does have a roof, so we don't have to worry about that. I suspect it will be closed. That will help out Adrian Hauser here. This season, he has a 57.9% ground ball rate. Here's another prop of the day, Terry. Strikeouts. I'm going with the under. He's currently sitting at 4.5. We're going to have to pay a little bit to get there. However, he has 4 or more strikeouts only once in his last 7 starts. He seems to get some timely strikeouts, but a lot of those games he's only had 2 or 3 despite decent innings totals. Again, it all comes back to he's willing to induce those ground runs, let the defense take care of things behind him. So I think that one is rather interesting. He is my SP2 for this slate. What do you like with regards to the Brew Crew and anything there from the Rockies along with Hauser? And do you know what Hauser's nickname is?
I don't. What is Hauser's nickname?
Doogie.
Which
is like a wildly dated reference that hardly anybody is going to get. But that was what it was on the MLB baseball reference page.
That feels like
it happened to catch my eye. Nicknames Doogie. I'm like, why do they call him Doogie? Oh my God, Doogie had from that show that was on 35 years ago. There we go. Doogie House.
Yeah, I feel like either the baseball reference writer, who's probably between your age and my age, wrote that and made that up, or maybe a coach gave him that nickname. Doesn't seem like one that his peers would have given him.
No.
What was that over under on him? I've got him at 5.65.
Ooh, 4.5. I'm going with the under.
So my strikeout model works in 2 ways. I've got an implied projection, which is based on his steamer projections and a couple other things, and then I have the actual projection, which brings in the opposing team factors. So the actual is 5.65. The implied is 4.37 though. So it's a dead on line there, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. So I really like that in terms of what Vegas did there. Anywho, 6,500 I think is at least reasonable for Hauser going up against this just pathetic Colorado offense. Against righties this season, they have just been completely terrible. They sit with a 139 team ISO, a 2.65% home run rate, and most concerningly, they're 31% worse than everybody else in the league, worse than league average at creating runs. A 69 team WRC plus against right-handed pitching, by far the worst in the league. The next worst mark, as I'm scanning this thing, is an 82. So that is a gigantic gulf between them and the next worst team in terms of creating runs. I think Hauser's probably mispriced for the spot, 7,000 on DK. It's not an amazing upside because he only strikes out 18.7% of hitters. There are some strikeouts available for him here, like we just talked about. But I just think based on the opposing offense coming back against him, maybe you just get one of these spots where he's super cheap and you can grab a handful of fantasy points and then spend that money wisely elsewhere. So he'd be on the board based on that for me. Brewers bats going up against Senzatella. I don't have any issues with rostering any of them. They're not expensive at all. I think Senzatella is a highly targetable pitcher in general. 14.9% strikeout rate, so a lot of balls are going to be in play. 1.40 whip kind of reflects the fact that a lot of balls are in play against him. Only a 5.1% walk rate, so most of that whip comes from base hits. I think there's plenty of narrative around the idea that the Brewers could have a pretty good game here.
All right, I am looking. It's been pointed out to me that Doogie Hauser is more like 25 years old. Technically 28 years ago it went off the air. That's from my favorite Twitter enemy, Seth.
Yeah.
Seth Hader. He's keeping me on the straight and narrow. We like to discuss 70s and 80s television on Twitter, particularly with our friend Jay Walker as well.
Love it. And, if you're thinking about it, like NPH did have that little bounce back a few years ago. So, he was on the How I Met Your Mother and all those things and in the Harold and Kumar movies. So maybe people know it a little bit more than we were giving credit for.
All right. All right. Reminder, we're getting off this show in 20 minutes because we have shows after us. We have the MMA Live Before Lock, UFC Live Before Lock is next. That is a 1 o'clock lock today for MMA. At 2 o'clock, we have the NASCAR Live Before Lock. And then at 6:15, you're going to get an hour with myself and Gundacker talking the 4-game main slate. Yes, there's only 4 games on our main slate, 2 at 7:15, 2 in the 10 o'clock hour. And then at 8 o'clock, you're going to get Eton and Greg talking NBA Live Before Lock, already in the can. Eton and Rinpak broke down today's 1-game slate. You can get that on the Awesemo YouTube channel right now. It will also be going out on the Awesemo Podcast Network. If you guys have not yet left a 5-star review on the Awesemo Podcast Network, I'm going to give you a way to get 30 free days of Awesemo premium content. All you have to do is leave a 5-star review on any of our podcasts, on any of the podcast platforms, and we're on all of them. Hey, you could probably enter this more than once. Leave a 5-star review, put in your Awesemo username in the review or your Twitter handle, and for 52 weeks, you will be eligible for a drawing once a week where we are giving away a full month of Awesemo premium content. Our easiest way to get a free month, and you're going against far less people than any of the Twitter contests. I highly recommend you guys do that. That's the Awesemo Podcast Network. We do have one general channel where everything goes out, and then it's also broken out sport specific just for you guys. Terry, moving to the next game here. I have lost my place, and now I am back. It is Atlanta at Cincinnati. We have Ian Anderson going against Castillo. Castillo is getting back on track. I do want to point out he has only 8 earned runs allowed over his last 5 starts, spanning 29.2 innings. Atlanta, never an easy opponent, especially in this ballpark. However, he does not seem to be quite the gas can that he was. And I did see a couple other industry analysts mention that they wanted to attack Castillo today. While I am not saying we roll with him, I do want to point out perhaps he is fixing whatever had been hamstringing him previously. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, I never really gave up on Castillo. I was trying to get to him when he was low priced and, still believe in the talent. And it's kind of rounding back into form now. He's up to a 21.4% strikeout rate, down to a 4.01 xFIP. 1.51 whip still needs a little work. 9.5% walk rate still needs a little work, as does the 27.3% CSW percentage. But he's getting there, and he's a more talented guy than what we saw just getting lit up earlier in the season. He was suffering dramatically from some batting average on balls in play against, and just a lot of happenstance in there. So I think that a lot of it was just noise. I think, some bad luck, some noise. I don't think the talent departed him. I'm a little skeptical about the matchup here. The Braves are a team that I don't love throwing pitchers into. Particularly with assuming Ronald Acuna's in the lineup. I think their top end at least is very good. Abraham Almonte is miscast in the middle of this lineup as he fills in for Marcell Ozuna. I don't believe in a 31-year-old quad A type of a player suddenly turning into a cleanup hitter here. He's at 215, 395, 369 with a home run and a 154 ISO over his 86 plate appearances in that role. Should be hitting elsewhere in the lineup, but Dansby Swanson is very playable here. So it would probably be a both sides for me. I would probably have some shares of Castillo coming in at 8,400 on the FanDuel slate. That's still an appealing price for his talent level for me. So that's a spot I would probably get to. 10-5 on DK makes it a little bit more challenging, but I assume the ownership would be lower based on that. So that would have some appeal pending what that ownership number looks like. I don't have the ownership loaded up in my sheet here just because it's such a mess this morning. But I think that would have a little bit of upside appeal to it. And then taking the other side of things, Ian Anderson pitching pretty well, 75 and 2/3 innings, 25.2% strikeout rate, a 3.48 xFIP, 12% swinging strike rate. The CSW for him is down a little bit more than you'd like it to be, a little bit below average. But I think he's in an interesting spot as well. Also kind of a both sides because his Reds offense is one that I really like to get to, and I like to get to against right-handed pitching. So I think this is just going to be a quadrilateral game for me. I'm going to have all 4 sides of this. I'm going to have some Braves bats, some Reds bats, and some of both pitchers if I'm playing that full slate. And I think the pricing is very fair. Ian Anderson for 7,500, even against a good Reds lineup on DK, I think that's a playable price.
All right. If only we had more time, Terry, we could talk about the institutional failure that is the Atlanta MLB franchise and the various cleanup hitters they have used. Nick Markakis, I'm looking directly at you over the years. It's not all Dale Murphy. It's not all Bob Horner. There's two names. No one's.
Not even Adam Duvall, who was
No.
on this one yesterday.
By the way, Adam Duvall coming up in our next game on a bit of a heater. Nice transition there, Terry. I think he has like something crazy, like 6 home runs in his last 9 games or something obscene like that. He's going against Pat Corbin, who has been awful this year. While he does have a 5-5 record, he has a 4.4 ERA, which is not even coming close to describing just how horrible he has been. He is now the de facto ace with, although I guess Scherzer is back, so that's fair. But Strasburg sidelined there. He's going against a rookie in Zach Thompson. No K in that. If you're going to be a professional pitcher and your name is Zach with an H, don't you change it to Zach with a K?
I think you kind of have to, right? I mean, that's just lame, especially, well, there is another Zach Thompson that was in the minor leagues that confused everybody. This guy's first start around, though, I think he was, forget which organization he was with, maybe the Cardinals or something, but maybe that's why is like, kind of an Actors Guild thing where he's got to insert a middle initial or, stick with the H, or maybe he changed it from a K to an H because the K guy was already here. But not much upside that I'm seeing anyway in Zach Thompson. He does have a 29.2% strikeout rate, but it's only over 12 innings in 3 starts, 3.99 xFIP and a 1.0 WHIP. Those are perfectly fine. It's just a matter of, does that hold up? Does that reliably hold up against the team? It's a top-heavy Nationals lineup going against him here. But on the other side of this one, you've got Kyle Schwarber, who I think has, like, to your point about Duvall, who's also on a little bit of a heater. Schwarber's on a massive heater. He's got 9, 10 home runs in his last handful of games as well, with a couple multi-home run games in there. So he's just been absolutely smoking the ball. So I'd be worried if I'm Zach Thompson or anybody rostering Zach Thompson about that top end of this lineup. And then it tails off in terms of the power upside for the Nats toward the back end. But you do have professional hitters in there with Starlin Castro, with Josh Harrison, and then the upside of Victor Robles. He's up to a 340 on base. He does have extreme speed, so he's not been the most productive fantasy player in the league by any means, and he's been more likely to give you a 0. But there is talent there. He was a premium prospect coming up, a kid they're still waiting on. So I think from top to bottom, you can put this Nationals lineup together in at least interesting ways, going up against a pitcher that I don't think we're going to see much from here. And then on the other side, yeah, absolutely. I think we can hit the Marlins again. They're very low priced. They project pretty well going up against Pat Corbin, whose stuff has just completely abandoned him. The breaking stuff just doesn't work right anymore. The slider's broken. 18.8% strikeout rate. It's a shame. This is a pitcher that I liked, but it seems like his talent has just kind of abandoned him at this point. So I expect big things from the Marlins bats, and I think you can kind of fire away on the power, at least on Adam Duvall. Jesus Aguilar, you get power and speed with Starling Marte. You get a decent hit tool and speed with Jazz Chisholm. Lots to like in this lineup. Even Jesus Sanchez, who I keep mentioning, lefty. I wouldn't hate rostering the rookie here.
There was an interesting tweet last night. I can't remember exactly what it said or who said it, which is not funny, but it basically was saying all the major league indications of going after the sticky stuff lead to Kyle Schwarber being the person most likely to benefit. Did you know he has hit home runs in 5 of his last 6 games, 8 total in those, and he also has 4 multi-home run games in the last 2 weeks.
That's unreal.
Talk about being on a heater. Wow.
He even got my home run calls off this night. I was in like a little 2-week slump, and then I hit his double dong the other day. So I was happy about that because, man, I was struggling there for a bit. So thank you, Kyle Schwarber.
Excellent. You know who doesn't allow home runs?
Jake DeGrom.
Jake DeGrom. You know who doesn't allow runs? That would be Jake DeGrom. He has allowed 4 runs this season. That's it. 4. So he has a 0.5 ERA. That's just phenomenal. Like you can't even quantify how good he has been this year. This is off the charts, territory that very few people have been in a sustained point to this point in the season. I mean, we're talking Pedro Martinez ahead of that, Bob Gibson ahead of that. And, think of all the old Dodgers pitchers and Yankees pitchers ahead of that. Yeah. This is just absolutely phenomenal. He's the clear number 1 today. We don't have the same weather concern that we do with Lance Lynn. Is there anything you can say redeeming about the Phillies? And which hitters do you like for the Mets?
They seem like nice guys. There's not much here for me for the Phillies. If you want to take them from a super contrarian point of view, and you want to tell yourself that Jake DeGrom's going to leave this start early and then they're going to get the Mets bullpen and play it that way, you're making up a story. You're doing something really, really specific with your shares. That's not what I would do here, but that would be the only way I would get to Phillies is if I'm saying, all right, DeGrom's arm is going to go flying into the stands in the third inning, and then you're going to have a bullpen game. And even if you're going that route, you're still completely taking at least a plate appearance away from the entire lineup because you're saying that they're going to face Jake DeGrom for 3 innings. So it's just not for me on the Philly side. I think you can fire away with DeGrom shares no matter what here. I don't really care about the price. He's literally having the best season of all time. He's doing it like 4.5 innings at a time, unfortunately. It would be nice if we could get a little bit more depth out of him reliably. But there was a thing I think it was in the Post the other day, just in an article that I was reading, they were talking about his season. And they said something like he could give up, I think it was 6 runs today, and his ERA would climb to only within a half a run of Bob Gibson's like all-time ERA mark. They literally lowered the mound that season because Bob Gibson blew everybody away so much. And DeGrom is like a run and a half better than that by ERA. It's ridiculous what he's doing this season. This is the best season in baseball history that we're witnessing by a pitcher. Just sit back and enjoy, roster him, roster the points, don't roster Phillies bats. If you want to get to Mets bats against Zach Eflin, I don't hate it. 23.6% strikeout rate, only walking 2.8% of hitters. He's been effective and efficient that way. 1.27 whip though, a 3.34 xFIP. He's been reliably decent, and I do get an okay projection on him. I think he plays as an SP2 here against the Mets, but I don't hate grabbing some Mets bats, particularly with Michael Conforto back in the lineup. They're a little bit more whole now, so they should be rounding a little bit more into form, and they're still cheap, particularly on FanDuel. So I can get to some Mets bats here along with DeGrom, but I would both sides this one because Eflin does make an interesting SP2.
Wrapping up the final game of our afternoon slates, we have Los Angeles, the Angels, at Tampa Bay. It's just a 7.5 implied run total here for this game, or game total, I should say. You have Alex Cobb in a remember me situation. He's scuffled a little bit here. Strikeouts are up. Ground balls are up. We'll have to see if he can continue that. He will be going against McClanahan. McClanahan has had at least 86 pitches in each of his last 2 starts. If only the Angels could get some talent around Shohei Ohtani, that would be awesome. Final thoughts on this before we get into our main slate here.
Yeah, I think Cobb is somewhat interesting given the strikeouts in the opposing lineup. He's still not a pitcher that I really trust, guy I used to target. I have difficulties rounding around to guys that I used to target for offense and target for stacks when they suddenly become good like this. But he's sitting in the 95th percentile in barrel rate, 97th percentile in chase rate this year, 83rd percentile expected slugging percentage. The average exit velo, 69th percentile, hard hit rate, 67th percentile. He's pitching great, and there are strikeouts available here for him. 7,800 is a fair price on FanDuel. 85, I think, is fair on DK. I think less of Shane McClanahan on the other side, particularly since he's 9,400 kind of inexplicably on the DK slate. 29% strikeout rate is good. He's been perfectly serviceable. I just worry about going into some of these righty bats, some of the righty power on this team. And then Shohei Ohtani, who hits lefties just as well as he hits righties and has plenty of power there. It's not a spot for me on McClanahan, but for 6,700 on FanDuel, if you wanted to throw a couple shares at it, it's fine. I just like other pitchers better that are in a similar price range. So it wouldn't be for me there. I would probably roster some of the Angels bats. I agree they desperately need to get Mike Trout back in this lineup, and then they need to pick up a premium ace at the deadline, and then this team's going to be nasty if they make the playoffs. By the way, Jake DeGrom has driven in 6 runs this season, so he's driven in 2 more runs than he's allowed.
That's just impressive. What is also impressive is our Awesemo premium content. We're going to give you 3 premium tools today. That would be the NBA, the MLB, and the MMA player rankings. Those are all free today. Reminder, coming on in 10 minutes, we have the Awesemo MMA show with the Live Before Lock. There at 2 o'clock, you're going to get the Live Before Lock, or the NASCAR Live Before Lock. They do have 2 cup races this weekend, one today and one tomorrow. 6:15, you're going to get the MLB Live Before Lock. And then at 8 o'clock, Live Before Lock with Eton and Greg breaking down the NBA game. The key thing that we want to look at here in our next one is, as we head to our main slate, there are some very targetable pitchers in this one, Terry. There are a couple that we are going to flock to, and then there to every other degree, there are going to be player or pitchers we want to target against. The first is a pair in this game, New York at Boston. Of course, we have yet another weekend series between these two AL East Titans. You have Montgomery going against Eovaldi. Boston against Montgomery, 236 at bats. It's a pretty good sample size. They have a triple slash of 296, 356, and 481. They are my stack of the day over there on Yahoo. I'm going to drop that article, the Spotlight Hitters and Stacks, along with Spotlight Pitchers article into the YouTube Slack there. Take us through why the Boston Red Sox are so darn amazing against this scrubby team. I forget who you root for, but against this scrubby team today that they're facing.
Can you not see my t-shirt on camera? It's behind the microphone here. This t-shirt's
I think you could cry into the Yankee hanky behind you.
That's right. This t-shirt is older than probably most of our audience. It's from the 96 series. So, I have not rostered Monty very much for DFS purposes. I think he's a better real-life pitcher than he is a DFS pitcher, and that's kind of borne out again in my projections here. So I wouldn't be going there. The Red Sox are interesting. They have gotten to Monty a little bit, but they're actually, in terms of what they've done against lefties this season, it's actually not as good as you would think with all the run creation in their lineup. 3.05% home run rate, near the bottom of the league. 161 ISO is in the middle of the league. 101 WRC plus means they're 1% better than average creating runs against lefties. Only a 22.2% strikeout rate. So I think there's just going to be too many balls in play against Montgomery. He doesn't strike out a ton of hitters. He's at a 24% rate for the season. So with them not striking out that much, with their obvious power and some guys who specialize in hitting lefties for power, it's just not a spot for me. I'd be worried if I had Monty in my lineups. I would definitely agree with you. You can roster this Red Sox team at least through the middle, the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hitters, and then you get pieces. Like if you got Christian Arroyo is leading off in the projected lineup, that spot's been flipping all over the place, so it could be somebody different. Whoever's leading off would be in play based on the lineup spot. And then you get down to like a Christian Vasquez could be in play where you need a catcher on DK. I like Bobby Dahlbeck if he's in the lineup as a power hitter from the bottom of the lineup. He's hit 9 home runs and 221 plate appearances. Doesn't do much else with the bat, but he can give you some sneaky power upside against the lefty there. So I think there's pieces throughout the Red Sox lineup. On the other side, I think you can throw Yankees bats back at Nate Eovaldi here. Their problem has been sequential hitting. They have the power. There are the obvious names in this lineup: Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, people like Luke Voigt. Even if I don't, Gary Sanchez hits everything hard still and has been kind of rounding into form, so I would get to him. DJ LeMahieu, still very cheap, had a nice night last night, hopefully rounding back into form. Yanks need him. My season-long team needs him. Then you get guys like Glaber, who's been struggling massively, Clint Frazier, Brett Gardner. There's a lot of struggles toward the bottom end of this lineup, and these guys are having problems turning the lineup over. Guys who used to be very good at it. So it's a little bit of a concern there. I would stick maybe toward the top end, the middle of the Yankees lineup if I'm stacking Yanks, but I don't really have a problem with it. I also wouldn't have too much issue throwing a few Eovaldi shares, just considering the Yankee strikeout issues.
All right, next game is the Cubbies versus the Dodgers. This is going to be a 4:15 local start, 7:15 on the East Coast. You have Julio Urias, who is going to be someone that we want to target as our pitchers. I have to point out that while he has thrown 82 pitches in 13 of his 15 starts, he has not topped 96, and he has thrown 90 or been over 90 pitches just once in his last 6 appearances. While he has allowed 13 home runs, he's been excellent this season challenging hitters. He has a 27.6 strikeout rate against a teeny tiny 3.6 walk rate, along with a 40% ground ball rate. Just know that from a pitch per dollar perspective, we're not going to get what the name brand suggests. Thoughts on this game? The Cubbies, the much maligned Cubbies.
The much maligned Cubbies. They're at least interesting based on their home run rate against lefty pitching. 4.27% home run rate on the season, creates runs 6% better than average against lefties. 174 team ISO is okay. It's above average. 24.8% strikeout rate in the split is a little bit below average. Certainly could be some strikeouts here for Urias, but based on the home runs that he gives up and the power that the Cubbies do have from Wilson Contreras, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, even lefty, Javi Baez, Ian Happ, Pat Wisdom has been smashing the ball in 83 plate appearances. Dude's got 10 home runs on the season and a 427 ISO. That's absurd. It probably won't hold up. I can't imagine. I don't think he's the best power hitter in baseball history. But once that evens out, it'll come down. But I think there's good at least 1 through 6 in the Cubs lineup, so I can get to some of those stacks. I can also throw Dodgers bats going against Alec Mills here. Don't think much of him as a pitcher. 16.2% strikeout rate on the year, 4.44 xFIP and a 1.48 WHIP. Only induces 7.1 1% swinging strikes. So there's plenty to love in terms of these Dodgers bats. Mookie, Muncy, Turner, Bellinger, Will Smith if you need a catcher in there. Even the back end with Chris Taylor, AJ Pollock, and Gavin Lux at the bottom of the lineup, that's not a terrible three-man stack to throw in there if you're looking to get weird and contrarian with these lineup shares. And with a 4-game slate in the evening main slates, it might be that kind of slate where you do want to get a little bit weird with a 3-man like that, where they could be productive against this pitcher and have a nice little night and not as many people getting to them, not as much salary requirements. So I think it's kind of a night to poke around at interesting 3-mans like that.
All right, speed round our last 2 games here. We have 2 10 o'clock games. We've got a show coming up after us, so we are up against it. I am going to mention a little bit here about Dinelson Lamet, and then you can talk to your heart's content about everybody else. So with San Diego has been very careful with the pitch. This is from my article. San Diego has been very careful with the pitch count for Dinelson Lamet, as evidenced by the 81 pitches he threw in his last appearance, which was his season high. There's been no need to push him, as they have designs on a World Series run, and he will be an important part of their rotation. Tonight, the Padres are nearly 3-1 favorites to earn the victory, and though it is probably a 60-40 or 70-30 likelihood that Lamet completes the 5th inning, which is required in order to qualify for the win, the Diamondbacks have won only once in their last 21 games and 3 times in their last 37. I'm loving Dinelson Lamet. We just need to realize he's probably only going to go 80 pitches. What do you like from the remainder of our 2 games?
Yeah, I think Lamet is certainly interesting if you're going to get any kind of length out of him going up against an Arizona team. 24.5% strikeout rate is 14th in baseball. So they're in the middle of the league in terms of strikeouts against righties, but they hit for no power. 2.3% home run rate is the worst in the split in the league. 129 team ISO is second worst to Pittsburgh in the league. So just plenty of upside here for him. And they were the team with that 82 WRC plus that I mentioned earlier that was second worst. So bad at creating runs in the split. Plenty of upside for Lamet. The only concern rostering him is that pitch count that you're talking about, but he's priced appropriately for that. It's not like we're paying $9-10 grand for him anymore and worried about the pitch count. At 7,500, if he gives you 85 pitches, that's fine. 7,300 on DK, same story. So massive upside there. I think we can get to some Padres bats supporting Lamet here, going up against Merrill Kelly. Kelly, 85 and a third innings. Oh, that's weird. 85 and a third innings pitched, 21.2% strikeout rate, 4.01 xFIP, 1.32 whip. There's going to be guys on base. He's targetable for sure. I wouldn't roster him if you wanted to get wacky with some shares at 6,500 on DK. I guess there's maybe a little bit of juice to squeeze there, but it's really walking the razor's edge there. It would be much more about Padres on all sides for me on this one, pitching and hitting. You can get to Tommy Pham, Tatis, Cronenworth, Manny Machado. I wouldn't sleep on Eric Hosmer, Will Myers, or Trent Grisham in there either. Really, the only non-hitter in the lineup is Victor Caratini at this point. So you can roster the heck out of Padres bats. And then in the other game, Alex Wood and Frankie Montas. Montas pitching to a 24% strikeout rate over 82 2/3 innings. Nice little season going. He had the PED issue, but he's kind of rounding back into form for where he was. It's still a little bit below in terms of the strikeouts of where he was, but it's okay. The concern is going up against the Giants team. Their offense has been fairly good overall, but they do still sit 4th worst in baseball with a 26% strikeout rate. So there's strikeout upside. The concern with rostering Montas here is that same San Francisco team. They're second best in baseball with a 4.38% home run rate against righties. Create runs 11% better, have a 196 team ISO that is best in baseball at this point against right-handed pitching. So there's a lot of concern that this San Francisco team could produce against him. So I don't know how much Montas I would end up getting to, particularly because he's priced at 8,800, 9,200 across sites. Probably more going to land on the Giants bats. You get to Alex Wood at 8,000 on FanDuel, 8,500 on DK. He's somewhat interesting, pitching fairly well this season. 23.8% strikeout rate, a 1.20 whip, a 3.67 xFIP. There's some meat on the bone in terms of what he can do here against Oakland. The A's are in the middle of the league, 23.5% strikeout rate, but similarly, they hit lefties for power, 4.08 home run rate, 11% better than average, a 180 team ISO. So they create runs, they hit for power here. Neither pitcher is safe. I think this would be an all 4 sides kind of a game for me, where I like both offenses a little bit. I like both pitchers a little bit. So hate to both sides the last game of the day, but I think it kind of makes sense.
All right. With that, we're clearing the decks. We're getting out of the way. We have the MMA Live Before Lock coming up next. Of course, you can follow Terry at DigitalB21 on Twitter. I am at Emac DFS, and it is Awesemo_COM. Hat tip to PrizePicks for sponsoring the show. Use promo code Awesemo, and they will match you with your first deposit up to $100. With that, gamers, good luck.